Welcome to the Mum CEO podcast. I'm your host, Esther Roach. Join me as we explore the dynamic intersection of motherhood and entrepreneurship. From the challenges to the triumphs, we're here to unravel it all. Get ready for insightful conversations, practical wisdom, and a whole lot of inspiration. Let's embark on this empowering journey together. Hello and welcome to another episode of the Mum CEO podcast. I'm your host, Esther Roach, and today I'm joined by Caroline. Hello, Caroline, and welcome.
Hi,
How are you today?
I'm very well, thank you, Esther.
Good, thank you. Would you like to introduce yourself to the audience, please?
Yeah, so I'm Caroline Nield. I'm a mum. I'm based in London, and my background is working in HR. I've worked in HR for probably over 20 years. It was something that I kind of just fell into. It wasn't a sort of a natural thing, but I went into HR and I worked in there. And primarily over the last, say, 20 years, I was working in education mainly. So over the last 6.5 years, I was working in special needs education. So I was working for a college and academy trust. And I really loved working there because you felt like you were really giving back because the people that they worked with were, the most vulnerable people in society. You had children and young people who had all manner of sort of different disabilities, sort of a broad spectrum, really. So their strap line was, that you're working to transform the lives of these young people. And that is really what it felt like. And so it was really important work for me. But I think what I realized is that I needed more. I think I wanted to do more with myself. And I started working with a coach and mentor around sort of setting up, going into business, which was something I never thought I could do because when I was in school, one of my GCSEs that I did was business studies, and I completely failed it. I really hate it. I mean, I suppose going back like that far back, it was probably quite different to if I was studying it now, because it was very dry, it was very boring, and I just didn't get the concepts at all. It was just like, I don't understand business. I really don't understand it.
Yeah.
So to go into business myself was really a kind of a big transition. But it was something that I kind of been building up towards over the last few years. And even before that, I was also one thing that I did in my mid 40s was I trained to be an actor.
Oh,
And yeah, so it was something that I always wanted to do since I was younger. I always remember that I remember this one school friend that I had who she used to go to like a weekly class on a Saturday, a theatre school. And I always remember being really jealous of her, thinking, oh my gosh, it'd be really amazing to do that, something like that. But it was just not something that, my mum could afford to do. Um, and so it was something that I kind of dabbled with as I grew up. So in my 20s, I did a bit of amateur theatre. And then kind of getting married and having my kids, everything kind of got took over with that. So, when you become a mum, they're kind of like that's your priority, isn't it? Your main focus. So you can kind of end up losing yourself a lot. And I think that's definitely what happened to me. Um, so I think that was something that I picked up again later on in life as well. So having that experience would very much you have to kind of be in charge of putting yourself out there, sort of writing to people. That kind of gave me the confidence, I guess, to think actually I could be in business for myself because I can go out there and reach out and put my market myself. You have to be on social media, you have to, create your show reels and your marketing material and that kind of thing. So it didn't seem like a massive leap when I looked at it like that and thought, so that's when I started toying with ideas of, things that I could do. And there's been so many different ideas, when you go into business and you
oh
think,
yeah.
right, okay, can I do? And then you start trying different things. And I've tried things like I did a bit of video editing at one point where I was doing that because I really enjoyed it. Because I used to sort of edit my own show reels, so I was getting quite good at doing that. So I did things like that. And then I kind of decided that coaching was a thing that I really was something that really was I was drawn to. And I think it was the aspect of really helping people to transform their lives in a similar way as what I was doing, not directly when I was working at the Academy Trust, but that was the kind of the thread that was going through what I was doing is that you
Yeah.
were helping people to transform, but this would be on a more direct basis, working with people. So yes, when I decided that I was going to leave my job,
Mm.
that's when I decided, right, I'm going to go into coaching. So that's when I started doing the training for that. So yeah, it's been a bit of an evolution, I guess, in terms of how
And
I've
it's
got to where I am.
Yeah, it's such an incredible evolution, though, if you want to call it that, because there's so many different moving parts that have made it
Mm.
happen to get to where you are. And I love the fact that, you've mentioned about obviously studying business at school, never thinking you would ever do business. But I think
Mm.
the importance of, it's almost like a message to others that even if you failed at something at a younger age, you can always revisit and restart, but different things happen, and there's different situations that call us to kind of get into the different careers we move into. But what I want to understand,
Mm.
just to go back a little bit, so you started obviously, with the academy, which seemed to have really kind of like ignited this passion for you. Other than that, the work you were doing, the HR work you were doing, what else
Mm.
drew you to becoming an autistic coach? What was there for you as a person?
Um, well, I guess it started from my own journey, really, because I was only diagnosed as being autistic probably, it's coming up to 4 years now, it'll be 4 years in
Wow.
May. Um, and it was not something that I ever realized about myself. And the only reason that I got to that point was through my son,
Right.
because he was diagnosed as being autistic when he was 7. And me and my husband had never really didn't really know much about sort of autism
Mm.
before then. So it was only really through his school that they sort of were quite convinced that that's what he had. Because back in when he was in nursery, it was just there were so many issues with his
Yeah.
behavior. He had speech and language problems. He couldn't, there were certain sounds that he couldn't pronounce properly. So he was in speech and language therapy. I was constantly going in and out of his nursery because, there'd been incidents that happened, and they were always trying to kind of work out if there was any pattern, what things were causing it. Um, and it was just a lot, really. And it got to the point where we didn't really know how to help him. And so I was really worried about how he was going to be when he went to school. But actually, that was probably the best thing, because actually, when he went there, they had a really good Senko,
Mm.
special needs coordinator, who was very much aware of, neurodivergence. And she spotted it straight away. She was like, I think he might be autistic. So we were like, oh, okay, this is new to us. We didn't realize that was, um, that could be the reason. So obviously we went through the whole process of getting him assessed, and that was a long, drawn out process. And eventually, like I said, because he started school age 4, and it was only when he was 7 that he was diagnosed. That's a 3-year process that we went through. And it was after that journey that then me and my husband were invited to go to like a parenting class to learn more about it.
Mm.
So it was helping us to get more awareness. And I think from that was where I started to spot things that felt really familiar to me.
Right.
Um, and so I started to kind of piece things together. And when I started to think back of, things that I used to do back in my childhood as well, things that I've kind of still do now, it started to all make sense. And then I started looking into it more. I started watching YouTube videos. You know, as you do, you start this sort of with research, sort of thinking, okay, could this be that? So I got to the point where I spoke to his school because I didn't know really what to do with all this information. And they said, well, it is very common that parents who have a child who's diagnosed then realize that they may also be neurodivergent. And so they suggested that I speak to my GP, which I did. And then I sort of went on my whole then journey in terms of that assessment process for myself. Um, so I can't remember what your original question was, but
It's the same. It's what led you
how I
to
got that, yeah.
want to be an autistic coach, which is, a whole journey. And it's one of the things I was going to say to you is, I have spoken to various people on this topic as well. And one, you've got some people that are completely in denial. But two, some people do know, but they don't want to know. And thirdly, one of the things you've mentioned is with your son, you are quite lucky that you were in a school where you had a really Senko who was able to kind of point you in the right direction. But even with that, you can find that parents are not really, it's almost like they don't want to know about this. Even if somebody says to you, oh, I think this might be the case, some people would be in denial with that. What would be your advice to parents that are not sure, or almost like resisting that, oh, I don't want a label for my child?
I don't see it as it being a label. To be honest, I don't that often talk about the fact that I'm autistic because I don't feel the need to say that or to say that about my son, for example. I feel it's more about awareness.
Yeah.
So I think knowing what your, how you see things and how you perceive things, how your brain works, as I kind of talk about a lot. I think is the most important thing. I think it's not necessarily about the label, it's about knowing yourself better. Because I think the more you know yourself better, the more you can be authentic, you have more clarity. You can work with what you have in a better way. Do you see what I mean? So I think for me is what has driven me to do what I'm doing now as a coach. Coming back to your original question, I think it's about helping people to work with the way that they work in a better way, in a more sustainable way, to really kind of because there are a lot of strengths in terms of being neurodivergent. There are obviously, difficulties that maybe, we have to navigate. But I think it's looking at all the things that in a clear way and thinking, okay, these are the things that I can do, these are the things that I can do well, these are the things I maybe need to do in a different way or adapt. But it doesn't mean that I can't do that.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? I don't think anything's impossible. It's just working in a way that best suits you. And I think that is what I'm looking at, exploring more and more, and then helping other people to do the same.
Yeah, and that's a really incredible point, because I think sometimes we can be really hard on ourselves, and it's not whether you have anything in terms of you are autistic or you're not autistic, but it's the fact that especially when you become a mum, there's a lot of changes in your life, and you've got to make it as sustainable as you can, because you don't know what's happening. Sometimes you've got people that are not sleeping at night, but they're still expected to perform at 150% in work when they've not been sleeping because the child is not sleeping well. And then it suddenly becomes your fault that you've got a baby and you're trying to, have an Instagram looking home, but that's not realistic.
Yeah, yeah, and I definitely obviously went through a period of that. I mean, my children are a bit older now, and my son's now he's coming out to be 14 next month, and my daughter's 17, so much older now. But I can definitely remember the times when when they were younger, and it was so hard. It's very hard. I mean, at that point, I wasn't necessarily in business, but I was definitely I had a full-time job, and navigating that with children is very difficult. You do have the sort of very much periods of time where you're not sleeping so well, and you're dealing with all the things that come with motherhood, and then we had all the additional challenges of the things that my son was going through, and there was a lot of, I guess, additional mental load I felt.
Yeah.
And I think I was definitely getting to a point at one stage where I felt quite burnt out.
Mm.
I felt like I wasn't coping very well because you're dealing with all these things day to day, you know, all the issues that he was dealing with, and trying to manage even like the relationship between him and my daughter, because he would often be quite um antagonistic towards her.
Right. Mm.
So you're kind of managing that, you're navigating, you know, all the usual things that you have to, you know, navigate as parents, on top of your job and everything else. So yeah, it is very tough. It is very tough, I think. So I think with women in business, I think it's even more so that you have to be kind of manage it in a to the best of your ability in terms of what your capacity is able to handle, because you can't just necessarily just push harder and push harder, and you need to factor in your energy levels, what you can cope with.
Mm.
And yeah, I'm not saying that you don't have to work hard, because you do have to work hard, and I do that. I mean, the way I do things is maybe a little bit different. I might have days where actually I don't feel like I can be all in, but that doesn't mean that I won't put in the hours at another time.
Yeah.
You know, like pretty much a lot of the weekend I've been doing quite a lot of work, um, on, you know, things that I'm getting ready for a particular promotion that I'm doing. And I just go with when my natural energy is there, if you see what I mean.
Yes.
So when I feel like I've got the capacity to do it, I'll go all in. And I think that's works towards my autistic strengths, because when
Mm.
I'm focused on something, I'm focused on something. I just, you know, I kind of go a little bit down a rabbit hole where I just go, right, I'm doing this, and you know, and I can get things done quite quickly.
Mm.
Whereas at other times I might feel like, oh no, I don't have the space to do that. So it's all about kind of recognizing when you have this, you know, working on your, looking at your capacity and your energy, to be able to plan out what you can do, and what you need to, when you can do things and when you need to let go of things. What are the right things you need to do, prioritizing in the right way, making sure that you're looking at the top things that are really going to move you forward.
Yeah.
And I
Absolutely.
think that's the way I've started to work more, is
But
to
that's
really kind
all.
of lean into that.
Yeah, but that's all coming from the fact that you understand yourself better, isn't it? It's kind of like you know
Mm,
yourself better
yeah.
than you did before. But just going
Mm,
back a little bit, one of the things you mentioned, first of all, was the fact that you got a coach and a mentor for yourself. How
mm.
important is that? Because I think there's a lot of people are always arming and ahhing about, do I do that or do I not do that? And would it help me if I'm trying to start a business, or just even if I have a business, just to move me forward?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's very important. I think a lot of the time you can know what you need to do, but just being able to sort of follow it through and implement it,
Mm.
you might need that additional support. And I haven't always been able to work one to one with this particular mentor, but um, I'm a part of a community
Right.
that, you know that I can get regular kind of
Support.
expert help and support, accountability.
Mm.
So where we have a sort of thing every week where we set our intentions at the beginning of the week. So
Mm.
we know exactly what we're focused on that week. And then by the end of the week, we can say, right, okay, I know that I've managed to achieve that.
Yeah.
And it's having that kind of support and that kind of community around you that I think can be quite helpful. It's certainly something that has been absolute lifesaver to me over the last few years. It's something that I've been doing for the last 3 years.
Okay.
And when I'm able to, I will do more additional support as well.
Yeah.
So it's just managing that. But yeah, I think doing things on your own is it's just not worth it. I think having that support is so vital. I think, yeah, I would encourage anyone who is, building a business or, um, you know, doing coaching to have somebody that is supporting them as well. I think all the best coaches and mentors have that. They don't, you may look at them and say, okay, they're mentoring me, but then they've got somebody at a higher level who's mentoring them. So there's always different levels. So, yeah, I think support is definitely the way to go. I think having people that you can, you know, communicate with, that you can get that additional support, I think is vital. Yeah.
And I think it's across everything that we do, because I think sometimes as women as well, we don't ask for that help, even with the children, even with the chores at home, where,
Mm.
I'm pretty guilty of that myself. Sometimes I'm just like, yeah, I'll just do this and it'll be quicker because, and then sometimes you think I should have just asked somebody else.
Yes, yes, I'm getting a lot better at that. I was definitely a type of person that didn't ask for help.
Yeah.
Um, Even where, like I said, I'm in this community and you'd have like sessions with a guest expert, and you always have the opportunity to ask a question. When I first joined, I would never ask a question because I'd be like, what do I ask? Is it gonna sound stupid? I don't even know what to ask. And I'd see other people doing it all the time. Every week they'd be there with they'd ask a question, they'd get the help. And I'm thinking, why aren't I able to do that? And partly it was fear, partly it was not knowing what to ask. And I'd sit there thinking, why am I not doing that? And then I kind of got to a stage now where I'm thinking, no, if I need to know something, then I'm going to ask. Because if you don't ask, you don't get.
Yeah.
And sometimes you need to be a bit more selfish and think, right, no, okay, I need to ask for something because I'm not sure where I need to go with what I'm doing. So
Mm.
it's best to ask rather than just hold that back. So I've definitely got a lot better at that. But it is, yeah, I think it probably is a very sort of female thing as well. But
Yeah.
yeah, it's yes,
Okay.
it's
Well,
something we
I'm
definitely
glad.
need
I'm
to.
glad you're getting there with it, because it took me a while as well to sort of get the hang of
Mm,
it, and even now, sometimes every now and again you kind of fall back in that. But yeah, I'm not afraid to ask anymore now, because I used to be very much so. And
yeah.
in terms of we've spoken about a lot of the things and the importance of obviously the mentoring, the coaching, and you are an autistic coach. Do you predominantly work with families that are going through autism, or do you work generally with anybody who wants to just have a sustainable work-life balance and set their businesses up?
Yeah, it is more than the latter, working with women in business,
Hmm.
women that who maybe are feeling like they're a bit overwhelmed, they're dealing with so much and they're just not really coping very well. They're very capable, they know exactly, they're from a point of view of what they're doing, they know what they need to do, but
Hmm.
they just feel like they're in um feeling the constant pressure.
Yeah.
So, and what I want to do is to help them to structure things in a better way, really think about, like I said, coming back to before, I said about thinking about their capacity, thinking about their energy, what they can manage in a day, what their priorities are, and really coming to creating sustainable ways of working that really l- help them to create their business in a way that fits how they work and how they are more productive.
Hmm.
So that's my main focus at the moment. And a lot of the time that is with women who are late diagnosed because they they've kind of spent so many years
Hmm.
not knowing and maybe struggling, not really been able to articulate why they've found things so difficult.
Yeah.
Um, So for me, it was things around communication. I found that I take processing information for me was difficult sometimes. Like we'd sometimes be in big meetings at work, and people would just be talking, 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 and I'm like, I would find it really hard to keep up with what they were and follow what was going on
Yeah.
because they'd just be sort of saying, and it wasn't that I didn't understand what they were saying. It was just that sometimes I think I need to take a bit more time to process it first And then so I'd find sometimes it'd be like a day late, like later on, or the day next day, where I'm thinking, okay, that's what they meant by that. Now I can't, and then I'm thinking, now I need to find out more about that because I feel like I'm on the back foot because I've missed a
Yeah.
step, and they're already like, yeah. So it was all that kind of thing, and communication difficulties, needed things to be very clear and not vague, because a lot of the time when people communicate with you and they say, we need to do this, we need to do that, and it just wasn't very clear. I'm very like, my brain is very literal. I need things to be very structured and very clear. And luckily, once I had my diagnosis, I was able to speak to my manager. And she was really good. She was like, you just tell me how you need to communicate, and we can do that. So that made things a lot better. But it's just knowing how you need to receive information is the key thing. And then once you're aware of that, you know how to deal with it, and you can
Yeah.
better manage. So I think it's really about just helping people to better manage how they work, structuring how they work.
And how do you work with people? Do you do one-to-one basis? Do you do group sessions? How can people work with you?
So at the moment, just one-to-one is what I'm doing at the moment, one-to-one work. So just individual sessions. I am going to be launching sort of like a more structured, not program, but one-to-one program. So where I'd work with somebody over a period of 12 weeks.
Okay.
So that, because I think just doing sort of a few one-off sessions doesn't necessarily help to really embed and implement things.
Yeah.
So what I really want to do is to work with people over a longer period of time, so we have time to really kind of go into different tools that might help them, and then let them be able to implement that. And that could be working weekly, or it could be working once, we could have sort of sessions once a week, or we could have sessions once every couple of weeks, because sometimes people need a bit more time in between sessions to really kind of, embed what they're doing. So that's kind of how I see the work that I'm doing with women at the moment, is to really work with them one-to-one, really help them to I guess work out the best ways of working for them. So it's got to be tailored to their individual needs.
Yeah.
I mean, I have a structure of how I think that would look like, but for each individual person, that might be different. So
Yeah.
it will be tailored to the individual needs of the women that I'll be working with. Yeah.
Oh, fantastic. And where can they find you?
My main platform at the moment is Instagram, is one that I'm using mostly. So that's where I've got most information about and where I'm posting, but also, I'm on Facebook and LinkedIn as well. But Instagram is my main platform at the moment.
And what is your handle on Instagram?
It's Caroline_Nield.
Okay, perfect.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
what sort of you've shared so much stuff on here. Have you got any tips you'd like to leave the audience with at all?
Oh, any tips? I think really that if you feel like you're not managing, you're not coping, you're overwhelmed, it's not anything that's wrong with you. It's not anything you need to fix. It's not anything that's broken. You just need to find better ways of working. And I think that is what my message is that you need to find ways of working that fit your life, fit the way you work, the way you think. So that's my main message and my main tip. And that, the best thing that people can do is to have more awareness of themselves, because that's where it starts. It all starts with knowing yourself better. And I think that's the journey that I think people need to go on.
Fantastic. Well, that's some brilliant tips there. It's been an absolute pleasure to have you on the show, Caroline, and thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Esther. It's been lovely talking to you.